Blog Talk Radio.
Well, hello once again. We are back in the Billy Meyer case. I hope you've enjoyed the show. This past week, we've had a couple of very interesting guests on. Dr. Frosty Wooldridge on Tuesday, Cheryl Costa on Monday, Stephen Pigeon on Friday. Today, you're stuck with just me. So that's maybe not as fun. But I'm hoping that we'll get into some very interesting things here in the Might of Thoughts. You know, Billy has written these fantastic books, and if you've ever read any of them, and I hope you have, if you've been listening to the show, you can get some from Michael Horn. If you go out to, just Google him on the web, and you'll get his website, and he'll have an email there. And you can contact him and get some of these books because, particularly, at least for me, The Might of Thoughts is the one book that helps me more than anything else in day-to-day life. It seems that, now that I've read this book over and over again, I can see so many cases of where my thoughts have been wrong. And it's good to be able to correct those thoughts, get back on the right track, and then you can be a happy, productive person again. Now, so let me dive into the middle of page, let's start on page 238, and I'll read a little section for you. Remember, this book is all about learning how to think. We're supposed to think in a neutral, positive way, which means that you're not negative and you're not positive necessarily, maybe just slightly to the positive. And the reason we focus to think this way is because the universe, allegedly, is kind of in a neutral, positive balance. There is a universal consciousness, a superintelligence behind our universe. It's not a God. It's not a Heavenly Father. It's not going to save you. It's not going to do your work for you. You are responsible for your own life, your own thoughts, your own health. The power of your thoughts is truly incredible. We are the master of our own destiny. We create our own good luck. What we think about ourselves, we make. What we think about ourselves, we become. And what we think, we make real. So your thoughts are tremendously powerful. It's the one thing that we have to remember. And many of the circumstances in our life come about mostly, almost always, because of our thoughts. Now, we have conscious thoughts and unconscious thoughts. The unconscious thoughts cause problems a lot, and they can be incredibly powerful. So we are working in learning this book to train our consciousness to be neutral, positive. But let me read this sentence here, and I better start on page 236. It says, "But as a rule, the error pertaining to that is not searched for in oneself. Rather, it is pushed into other human beings, or the social conditions beyond one's control are simply held responsible for it. And they are declared to be the blame. So when we have problems, we say someone else is to blame, some social condition, some other thing caused this to be. I'm not responsible. However, the Meyer material says, however, as a rule, the actual problems do not actually lie beyond the individual's control. They lie in the individual himself or herself. And exactly, that is the crucial point which makes it obvious that the necessary solutions also lie in the individual. So we are responsible for everything we think, for everything we do. And if failure emerges in some form, regardless of whether it is the area pertaining to the consciousness and the thoughts, in one's character, one's morality, or one's mood, whether in one's external behavior or in one's presentation of oneself or in some sort of life situation, in the environment, and so on and so forth, it can be recognized with exact consideration and investigation, practically always, or at least in most cases. Everything leads back to a dominating, negative kind of thought pattern, as well as to the presence of elements of failure in one's own personality. So, our thoughts produce feelings. Our feelings grow based on our thoughts. Feelings are different than emotions. Emotions are roughed upward and go out of control. Feelings are something that are cultivated by the thoughts. Well, the feelings also produce more thoughts, and the feelings and the thoughts together eventually help us come to good habits. Now, if you're producing negative thoughts, you're going to produce negative habits, and you'll produce negative feelings, which will in turn create more negative thoughts and will bring negativity into your life. So we want to stop that pattern. We want to control our thoughts and bring good circumstances into our life. Such elements of failure eat into the thoughts and determine their negative form, whereby in the consciousness, the knowledge about one's own inner power is displaced and is destroyed, and makes room for a pure belief which also very quickly manifests unconsciously and operates automatically. And this belief is then built up upon the destructive idea that one's own ability to be successful is lacking or has been choked. The danger of belief is very profound. The Meyer material tells us these beliefs are often negative. We believe that we are weak. We believe that we are insufficient. And that's where we're going to get more onto our topic today, the importance of confidence and what confidence is. Therefore, it is all the more important for every human being to always be clear and conscious and know that he or she becomes or is exactly that which the image of his or her consciousness produces. So you are exactly that which the image of your consciousness produces. Oh, wow. We're responsible for a whole lot of mess-ups in our life, because everything is brought to fruition by means of the thoughts, by the might of the resulting thoughts. So if you feel negative thoughts coming on, here's a little thing you can do. Tell yourself you're confident, you're optimistic, you're relaxed, you're cheerful, you're enthusiastic. You're relaxed, you persevere, you endure, you're calm, you're satisfied. And once you tell yourself these things, you'll start to move back into a good state of mind. That's what you got to do, is because negative thoughts have a way to repeat. They repeat around some negative idea, and we rotate around these negative thoughts, and they take control of our lives. This book is truly a work of art. It's so dense with information, and we should be grateful for the man that wrote this. Now, his spirit form, his Geist form, we all have a spirit form that lives in the center of our middle brain in an area called the superior colliculus. And it is of immense power. It's a fragment, a tailstock, as it's called in the German, of the universal consciousness. The universal consciousness is the greatest intelligence and power in our universe. It's not a heavenly Father. It doesn't really even have a personality. It creates universes as a part of its own evolution and creates these spirit forms which live in human beings and live many, many lifetimes. We live millions, even billions of years as we go through these reincarnational cycles and up 7 steps on this ladder of evolution. And the most critical way to get up these stairs, these evolutive stairs, is controlling your thinking, because it all comes down to your thoughts. Let me read again here. But what is to be done now in the case in which one's own consciousness, one's own capabilities for being successful are doubted? Now this comes to confidence. Let me pull out the work I did, if I can find it here, today on learning a little more about confidence. Because, in that little drill I give, I go through, I'm confident, I'm optimistic, I'm cheerful, I'm relaxed, I'm enthusiastic, I'm thankful, I'm in harmony, I persist, I persevere, I endure, I am calm, I'm satisfied. The first step to getting control of your thoughts again is confidence, in my opinion here. This is kind of, I pulled things in this book and kind of put them together in a way that helps me out a little bit here. Much of our negative thinking comes from lack of confidence, self-doubt, anxiety. I really have had in my lifetime a lot of self-doubt, and I didn't even know it. I mean, I kind of knew it sometimes, but I never really realized how much self-doubt I really had. So we have to start to break the cycle of this negative thinking. We have to gain control of our anxiety so it does not gain control of us. And one of the ways to do that is understanding the unknown. And the unknown is one of the most important aspects of gaining control of anxiety. Anxiety is controlled by the intellect. So the term confidence means a feeling of self-assuredness from one's own appreciation of your own abilities. And Sfaths taught Billy about confidence, which I totally missed reading over the Sfaths Explanations. Sfaths told Billy that he must build up a great confidence for his future works. So shouldn't we do the same? Sfaths said, to that end, his entire work and all action also contribute, as also do manner and responsibility. How he confronts his obligations. That's, I think, an important idea. When you have an obligation, I think you should confront it head on. The fulfillment of obligations and how he lives. You must build up a great confidence for all your future and for all the successes of your works, your tasks, your job, your mission. And always know that you will accomplish everything and you will never fail. This is Sfaths talking to Billy. And if you maintain the correctness of your thoughts and feelings, as well as of your work and your actions in every respect, and also use your great powers of consciousness in this form, you will be able to have true confidence in yourself and not allow this to be shaken by anything. Sfaths goes on here, tells Billy, therefore acquire confidence and the certainty that you will always maintain control, whereby you shall not, however, behave in a way that does not correspond to your nature. Because human beings have see and recognize that you are a human being, as are they themselves. Now here's a little writing I discovered today that Billy wrote when he was 14. This is just one little small section of it. It's called The Basic Rules of Man. It says, each human being who wants to live according to reality must give to himself a sound sense of self-esteem, self-confidence, and preserve it. In this way, regarding oneself, healthy, self-sustaining, and progressive thoughts, feelings, and actions must be realized. So, the importance of confidence is very, very critical in the Meyer material. Let me continue reading in the book here. The solution to that is actually simple because, in fact, the image of the consciousness must only be turned around so that a reverse picture, so to speak, comes about. So if you have a negative picture, reverse that and make a positive picture in your mind. And this is how we control our thoughts. First of all, the thinking must be corrected, which happens by means of the power of the consciousness, which creates the will to create the thoughts. So confidence is critical. Sfaths told Billy about confidence, and if you remember, Sfaths is an extraterrestrial man that is no longer alive. He was nearly 900 years old back when Billy spoke with him in the 1940s and 50s. I think right around 1943, Billy had his first meeting with Sfaths, and then sometime around 53 or 54, Billy got his next teachers asking. But Sfaths was the play iron man. His strange pear-shaped craft would land in northern Switzerland, where Billy grew up. And what happened was Sfaths would bring young Edward Albert Meyer up into the ship back in what is about, first of all, 1943, Billy would get these telepathic messages, and he'd go out to a landing site. Sfaths' strange silvery pear-shaped craft would come down, and Billy would be lifted up into the craft, he would say, as if by ghostly hands. And one of the things that Sfaths did was put a device on Billy's head to protect his consciousness from those who would try to get into Billy's mind and cause him trouble. He also helped restore Billy's abilities from previous lifetimes. And Billy, on the earth for the past 13,000 years, has incarnated. And before that, his spirit form is even much more ancient. The Meyer information refers to his spirit form as Nocodamian. It came back, actually, from the spiritual planes. There are 7 evolutionary steps. The first step I like to call primitive, and then there's rational life, intelligent life, real life, life and creational wisdom. The 6th stage, which is this half spiritual, half physical stage, and then we're supposed to go up into these higher planes of spirituality. And in these higher planes of spirituality, we do more evolution, but at this point we don't have a body at all. And one of the things that we're told in the Meyer material is that Nocodamian came back to correct some of the irrationality that was going on in the people from Lyra and Vega. Nocodamian was the first incarnated personality of the same spirit form that currently inhabits Billy Edward Albert Meyer. And it's very interesting that contact that say that Nocodamian was a creation of the planet Sadar. So I wonder if our spirit forms are in some way related to our planet of origination. So the people from Lyra Vega had become murderous. Just as we've been told that our tangled ideas can lead to manslaughter, which is a very scary thing. So Nocodamian came out of this higher spiritual plane. I've never been there, I must confess. And that's for sure, because the spirit form of Edward Albert Meyer is the only one, and according to Meyer information, I'm giving you what the Meyer information is, the only spirit form that's come back. Typically, spirit forms continue and then merge with creation after this seventh stage of our evolution. And the first step in that seventh stage, within the seventh stage are another 7 steps. And this first level is called Arahata Prasada. And what it says here, that Nocodamian in Contact Report 238 brought rationality to his people in the Lyra and Vega star systems. And then he came back out of Arahata Prasada for the sake of his people who were not following the creational laws and commandments, to bring his people to reason and rationality. And this was about 12 million years ago. He had to recognize that his people's lack of understanding. And he decreed, this is pretty wild here, he decreed the logical use of force because the people were so degenerate that their senses and aspirations were, with all murderous means, after power. These people from Lyra Vega wanted power. And as one, these people had the audacity to violently spread out in the universe. And the people from Lyra Vega really populated our Milky Way galaxy, but they were warriors. So they autocratically and usurpingly named themselves the representatives of creation, an insane idea that they had already tried to actualize, in that they attacked foreign planetary systems, bestially murdered millions of people, and clapped them in chains. Some of them that they didn't kill, they enslaved. So Nocodamian decided, either I'm going to let my people degenerate into these universal monsters, or I'm going to command a halt to the murderous activity. So what happened is, the story says in Contact 238 that they used a decree to ordain sterility in a lawful and humane way. And thus the decree was passed, even through this Arahata Prasada level, had some aspect in this decree. So these people, when they would die, these warriors from Lyra Vega, they were not allowed to reincarnate. Their spirit forms had to stay a long time in this realm, the other side, until by the decree of Nocodamian again, they could find an existence in human bodies. Amazing story. So this is what we're told. Anyway, so how did they get out of control like this? And I'm going to try to answer that question. I mean, if you've ever wondered why you yourself have gotten out of control, it's going to take me a while to get there, so just bear with me here. And we're told on page 224 in The Might of Thoughts, it is necessary to search for the source of the life power and to develop the power. The word life power is Lebenskraft in the German, and we're told to search for the source of that, which is the Quelle in the German. And we're told to develop the power in order to have a reliable life potential on which you can depend and one you completely trust. The source of our life power is our consciousness and our thoughts, which must be formed, tended, and nurtured. And we must pay attention to our intentions, our endeavors, our ideals. Now, there is a difference between an idea, I-D-E-A-S. Ideas, tangled ideas, confuse the thoughts and abruptly go from one extreme to another, creating a misdirection of the thoughts, which triggers emotions. Tangled ideas will do the following. What's a tangle first? Let's define that. A tangle is something that's twisted together untidily. It's matted. It also means confused, jumbled, mixed up, messy, chaotic. Tangled can mean to bring together into a mass of confusedly interlaced or intertwisted threads. Tangled means a snarl, a mass, an untidy mass of things that are not in a state of order. So this is the state of our minds when we're in this state of mind. Now these are ideas, I-D-E-A-S. And the Meyer material says an idea is a concept that hasn't been fully developed. You haven't thought it through completely yet. You may feel like you have, but you haven't. And because of that, it has these things called unvalues, which are things that we're valuing that are actually negative. And if you can look inward, when you have these ideas in your mind, they will produce a negative thought. You won't feel confident about them. And they'll do the following. They'll confuse your thoughts. They'll make your thoughts go from one extreme to another. These are called misdirections, the one extreme to another. Your emotions will get triggered, and that's when you can do crazy things like murder and manslaughter. You'll find that they'll push, when you're in this state of mind, there's no virtue and rationality in your consciousness. You're governed by irrationality and virtuelessness. You cannot set what the Meyer material calls a seal or a life determination. You cannot even imagine these things. These concepts start to become foreign to you as long as your ideas are in this confused state. The idea is then you're not able to convert it into an ideal, an ideal, which is a completely thought through, healthy thought form that will not trigger your emotions and not get you in this bad state. So people get trapped by these ideas rotating in their minds, and they cannot get free of them. And these ideas, they rotate, and they produce a kind of misery that continues in our thoughts and really makes us feel bad. So look into your thoughts, and we're going to relax here just for a few minutes with a little music, and then we're going to get back to the Mind of Thoughts. I can't believe we've gone a whole half an hour here already. Here you go. Well, I re-uploaded some of my songs, and they may sound terrible. It's kind of hard for me to tell with these bad earphones that I have on. The real thing don't sound that way. It sounded like it was a little distorted. It's kind of hard for me to tell. I haven't played clips a lot lately, and I think, oh my goodness, I just noticed my volume was way down, and that's one reason why I hate to turn down. See, I've got this weird setup here with this other computer, so I apologize for that, folks, because you probably could barely hear me. It'll be interesting to listen to the archive from this. Oh boy, we do make mistakes sometimes. Anyway, we're in the book, The Might of Thoughts, and if you've ever looked at any of Billy's books, he has a lot of great books. I'm looking at The Psyche right now, the book called The Way to Live, The Art zu Leben, and The Might of Thoughts, and we were talking about something called unvalues before, and how these unvalues cause us great problems. So it'll be interesting when I listen to this to see if you could hear me at all the first half of the show. So I apologize. You might have to turn this up full blast to listen, to hear it, at least for the first part of the show. The might of thoughts. We were talking about tangled ideas. And so to convert your ideas, which are undeveloped thoughts, into ideals, which are completely developed, you must thoroughly contemplate them and work through them. And you must be able to identify values and unvalues in these ideas, and handle the values and the unvalues in these ideas. See, our life is directed toward evolutive striving. We work to gain values from the ideas. So we want to go through our ideas which are underdeveloped, which are unripe, which are not complete, and slowly convert them to ideals. And in order to do that, we have to create an evolutive attitude and conform to the evolutive attitude. So the ideas can become ideals and brought to fruition. In order to do that, it takes a great inner persistence, the powers of the thoughts and the consciousness that are coming into play. So a couple more ideas on information on tangled ideas. I did a little research on the German word for confused, jumbled, scattered, or tangled. We have the phrase entangled ideas. And I believe the term that I'm talking about is called veer. And the word veer appears in Contact Report 114. It can mean jumbled, scattered, or confused. This is to regard, you might think of jealousy and egoism that was occurring in Billy's group, was causing these tangled ideas. And it's amazing. I don't know. It's very, very easy for groups to get like this. And Quetzal, which is one of Billy's contacts, said something about love. And he said, love is neither a privilege nor a rite of passage, but rather an acquired understanding, a sincere feeling of harmony and recognition of the solidarity and the well-being of one's neighbors. It seems that there is some strife and wrong thinking in Billy's group. And Quetzal puts things in this manner. He says, erroneous and confused thoughts arise from this, and they degenerate into extreme forms. This is the one thing I see happening is we see these extremes which happen. So your ideas produce these extreme thoughts. And he talks about religion and how a lot of times people in religions get into this form of thinking that produces extremes. Like you've seen the holy rollers when they jump on the floor and they do all sorts of crazy things. So we need to learn to control our thoughts. We are responsible for our thoughts. One thing we need to control is our thoughts before we go to sleep at night. We're supposed to have relaxed thoughts. Maintain good thoughts and a cultivated, controlled concentration before we go to sleep. A lot of times I'm real guilty of this. Like I'll watch negative things on, YouTube or something, violent things, which is really bad. It goes into your subconscious. So I'm trying to get away from that as much as possible. So we are responsible for our consciousness. Our consciousness is like a garden, and we have to pull the weeds out of our garden. And our consciousness is our life force, and it's called the Lebenskraft. And your mental forces, your Lebenskraft, can affect other human beings, and you can raise or lower other human beings' life force just by your own consciousness. It's an amazing thing. I've been shocked by a lot of the stuff that I've read here. So we must master our concentration so that we think in neutral, positive ways. It affects our life force. It affects the life force of others. And there are so many things today that turn our consciousness into a negative thinking. And that negative thinking affects our life force. We used to live for over 1,000 years. And we were still influenced by the neutral positive thoughts of the positive extraterrestrials that were here. But we've kind of degenerated over the years. And I remember when I first read this passage, was the source of the life power, which must be created by oneself, lies in the consciousness, that is to say, in the thoughts. And I found that somewhat disturbing, that my own life power is completely determined by my thoughts. I'm still brainwashed to a degree, I think, by religion. So I was disturbed by that. How can I possibly create this life power in myself, I was thinking. In fact, it took me a couple of weeks of self-examination to realize that, wow, certain thoughts do really, in fact, invigorate me. Some thoughts give me strength and energy. Other thoughts, I just turn into a zombie. So, exercise is one thing that invigorates me. Music invigorates me. So we have to do the things which invigorate this enthusiasm. Now, so be careful about these incompletely developed factors, these ideas. They must be thoroughly contemplated and worked through in order to recognize and handle the values or the unvalues in them. I think it's pronounced differently in the German. I think they say Idee, which means idea, notion, brainchild, concept. The Meyer information says that the idea is incomplete, underdeveloped, unripe. However, the ideal is completely developed and thought through. We are encouraged to totally develop and think through our ideas so that they can become mature, completely developed ideas. Notice that it's the tangled ideas that confuse the thoughts. The ideas are incompletely developed factors. So the confusion comes from ideas, I-D-E-A-S, not ideals, I-D-E-A-L-S. The confusion comes from the thoughts that are not completely developed. And I imagine the challenge is to recognize when you have not thought something completely through. Shortly after you have these tangled thoughts, anger comes, because what it says there in 224, page 224, is that murder and manslaughter can result from incorrect thoughts. Remember, there's no room for rationality and virtue when these tangled irrational thoughts, irrational ideas come into the mind. And these tangled thoughts take up room in our consciousness, so much so that there is no longer room for rationality and virtue. Rationality is the state of being based on reason or logic. And we talked earlier about Nocodemi and how the spirit form having come back into physical life to stop the murderous people from Lyra Vega, who had evolved in terms of their technology very high, but had become conquerors, and they were going around the Milky Way galaxy and conquering people. So maybe that's where some of these ideas of Star Wars come from. A murderer or a despot only pursues unripe ideas from which he or she is never able to make an ideal, that is to say, a healthy, positive determination. And we get caught up in these ideas, and they cause us to rotate. They cause us to be irrational. There's a German term called devolutive Einstellung, or devolutive attitude. We can develop an attitude that's devolutive. We can't evolve with this devolutive attitude. And that's why in our so-called peace symbol, which has the lines going downward, this is ideally, what this creates is the senseless death thoughts. This is very non-evolutively created. It's senselessness. It's forced finiteness. We need to develop an evolutive attitude. We create an evolutive attitude and we start to conform to it. In Contact Report 10, it says, through this cognition, his attitude becomes a sanctuary, and all things along with him become holy, even the earth under his feet. We are told to recognize the values and the unvalues in our ideas. So we must remove the unvalues and turn the ideas into ideas. What is an unvalue? An unvalue is something negative over time that we have thought really was valuable. And let me give you an example. Unvalues can require months or even years to change for the better. Unvalues are related to our character pattern. They can be psychopathic in nature. An unvalue. Let me read what it says here up on the FIGU dictionary site. It says, the whole is a scale according to which the human being can assess him or herself as well as human beings in relationship to a psychopathic character pattern. Oh, this is where the murder comes in. One of them is the lack of ability to have deep feelings for others. This could be considered an unvalue. Lack of ability to have deep feelings for others. Pathological angriness is another unvalue. We start to value these unvalues, and some more of them are discussed in FIGU Bulletin 68. Lack of logical decision, lack of rational conduct, frequent change of sex partners. These are examples of the sociopathic, unvalued, pathological lying, mendacity, making untenable promises and then breaking them, exaggerated thoughts and ideas and feelings with regard to values of yourself, boredom, deceitful behavior, parasitism, deficiency with regard to real and long-term results in many forms, manipulative behavior with regard to fellow human beings, a selfish lifestyle. If you are dazzling or seducing or deluding other human beings, this is also an unvalue. A lack of guilt consciousness, a lack of behavioral control, imponderability. I'm not even sure what that particular term means. Maybe I can look that up just quickly here if you can bear with me. Since I've screwed so much about this show up, it doesn't matter anyway, right? Imponderable is a factor that is difficult or impossible to estimate or assess. Difficult or impossible to estimate. Maybe we focus on these things we can't really evaluate. Imperiousness, according to the principle of after me the deluge. To look into that too. Consciencelessness, pathological craving to defame someone, a sense of unfairness, a great poverty of feeling due to corresponding thoughts, maybe real negative feelings, endorsements of the death penalty, endorsements of torture, hate mentality, egoism, a deceitfulness, a chiefly manipulative behavior, a lack of real consciousness, a lack of bearing responsibility, a lack of deep-reaching thoughts and feelings, a lack of behavioral control, a lack of self-responsibility. It's very interesting. I think I'll just stop there. But it is very, very interesting to read these unvalues. I bet we've all had a little bit of those unvalues at times. So that was just a few of the 70 unvalues, I should say, of psychopaths. If 18 of the 70 negative characteristics apply to any human being, then we may have a deep-reaching psychopathy. In other words, we may be a psychopath. So, however, she is only able to do, and this is from Might of Thoughts, because he or she has created an evolutive attitude which he conforms to. But the unrighteous human being has created a devolutive attitude, whereby he or she panders to virtuelessness and to that which is unrighteous. With the whole process of thinking, the inner persistence is of particular significance. There are two kinds of people, one with a strong inner persistence and one with a weak inner persistence. Consciousness-based powers are expressed in perseverance and persistence, and precisely all these powers are greater and more enormous than what we can even imagine. If you train your consciousness-based mental muscles, it says here nothing is impossible for him anymore. Contact 257 talks about an extraterrestrial false flag invasion, and it talks about uses the word idea there. This is an idea that will eventually be placed on us. They're going to use this fear of extraterrestrials to try to set up the global government, the world government, which will supposedly then take away our rights of self-determination, which will take away the right to bear arms, the freedom of speech, the freedom of travel. The Meyer material does talk about this secret dark order. And one thing we have to do is learn to control these tangled ideas that pull in our head. We're going to need our full mental faculty so that we don't trigger our emotions. The German word auslösen means to trigger, to cause, to provoke, to elicit, to unleash, to release, to induce. We must not trigger these disasters. We can trigger these disasters around the world by our thoughts. Misdirected thoughts are triggering disasters on a planetary and a personal scale. To misdirect means to send something out in a wrong place, in a wrong direction. A trigger is something that causes an event or a situation to happen. The Might of Thoughts article on the Future of Mankind site talks a little bit about the self-destruct mechanism that we have in us. Now, we have a genetic manipulation here on the earth that has made us have an extremely short lifespan, and it makes us tend towards violence. Let me read what it says here. The genetic manipulations do not imply that terrestrial man is a born killing machine, but signify only that he is a combative life form capable of killing when required to do so. But when events trigger his loss of control or outbursts, such actions can lead to degeneration, but generally they occur when two factors, the consciousness and the psyche, hence the world of thoughts and feelings, are afflicted or overburdened. Have you ever noticed that? You've gotten overburdened, like somebody has said or done something, or your pet has done something that has just overwhelmed your thoughts and feelings. And then you go into passion, and then you are triggered. So, and that is the compulsive inborn anger that we have. And this is part of the genetic manipulation. This behavior, pay attention to that. When your world of thoughts get overburdened, you shortly will be triggered after that. So, there's a collective human subconscious, by the way, a we form, and that is affecting all people. Everyone is connected to this we form. Now, we've really dove into a lot of very dense material today. What can I say about the Might of Thoughts book that I haven't already said before? It's overwhelming. It has so much information. It's so practical. It's so helpful. It's critical that we learn this stuff. Our life depends on it. We can really mess up our lives so quickly by not controlling our thoughts. Just a brief, and a very brief, since we're about out of time, I wanted to look again at one of our creational natural laws, which is the law of striving. Again, just to get back to the big picture, so to speak, since we're sitting here analyzing thoughts. There are creational natural laws. The first one's love. Not romantic love, but the love that's based on respect. It's a love based on admiration. Like if you're inspired by nature, that's a kind of love. You should have a deep appreciation for things and a respect for it, a sense of awe. Love is the highest principle in all creation. And through it, everything exists in absolute logic. So all of nature, there's an absolute logic. Everything has a purpose. Every tree, every bush, every plant, every tiny animal fulfills its purpose in love, which is the first creational natural law in the universe. The second is striving. And striving means we work. Our happiness depends on it. Every aspect of your life has a work, whether it's your job, if you have a day job, if it's cleaning your garage, if it's taking care of your dogs, which bark too much, like at least one of mine is. Striving requires an expenditure of effort and must be achieved through hard work. Striving is not simply dropped into your lap, and that again and again. There are circumstances which work against the striving. Now, one of the circumstances which worked against our show today was I had turned down the volume to about halfway because I was listening to music or something. And I always tell myself not to do that because when I start the show up, I won't have my volume up. That's the challenge that we have in striving. It says right here, there are circumstances that work against the striving. So you can pick out things in your own life. You know, you're working hard on trying to do something, and then something comes up. It's actually part of the process. Therefore, one's striving cannot be constantly and really gratified because there are multifarious powers which work against the striving. However, this is not abnormal, like I said. Rather, it's truthfully in accord with the natural law. Because where there is no resistance, there is no effort for the progress. Therefore, it has to be in accord with natural law that an opposite pole is positioned against the striving. It's a pain, I know. Believe me, I agree with it. Based on the teaching of creational law, there must be always two poles, a positive and a negative, a pro and a con, a negative and a positive. Together, the two poles produce one, a oneness in equalizeness. This is a creational law based necessity which a life form will never succeed in pushing over. You can never win by trying to get the negative out of your life. You will drive yourself batty. Don't do it. I've done it. It doesn't work. I would even go one step farther. Be careful if you have negativity in your organization where you're working. I would say, be very neutral about it. Don't try to get rid of it necessarily, because this could be the negative pole that should be there. That's part of natural law. It's hard to tell. Even though it's stupid at times, but let me continue. But where this to be delusionally attempted, then for the conserved life form, this would mean the end of physical existence if there was no negative, or at least the gravest psychical and consciousness-based harm. So don't try to get rid of the negative. Remember, it's part of it. Just be neutral when you're dealing with the negative, like what I screwed up today's show trying to do with my volume. Anyway, you're listening to Ohio Exopolitics. We have been studying the profound wisdom of the writings of Edward Albert Meyer. We'll be back hopefully tomorrow, and we'll talk to you then. Have a great day.